Hello everyone, this is Marshall Gamer, and this is going to be my very first update on the Russo-Ukrainian War. I'm going to hope to try and do daily updates on this. However, let me just say this. I extremely underestimated how hard it was going to be to make this map. This is literally a week project. So I really want to make daily updates, but even just doing that is time consuming to change the map or whatever. So I'm sure it's not gonna try, but it's gonna be difficult. Let me just say that I have a lot of things on my hand right now. I'm gonna try, but it's gonna be close. There's a lot of things going on in this war. I have been following this war since day one. I have a lot of inspiration for wanting to start doing my own updates on this. I'll tell you those at the end of the video. For now, let's just get into... These are not just the daily updates. These updates that I have for you today are not just from today. These map updates. These are from, like, the week. Like, the whole week of me making this map. Because I made the map. And then, of course, the front kept on changing as I was making the map. So then I then had to update the map based off of those changes. And there was glitches. It was a whole mess. Like, I actually almost started raging at one point with trying to make this, especially in the Donetsk region, because it started glitching out, and it was a whole thing. I think I got it sorted out, and I'm gonna do my best to try and make the updates, but it's gonna be close. Let me just say that it's gonna be close. So let's start over here in Donetsk. Let's start down here with one update that happened a few days ago, and that is the Russian forces advanced west of Pavlivka, right here. See here? Let me just explain this, all this polygon stuff. The way that I show the map updates, because I'm using, I'm using like my maps on Google Maps. So the way that I show the map updates is that I will, if it changes, let's say the Russians advance, I'll pull the Ukrainian line back like this. I'll click on it, then I'll drag it back like that. What the heck? I don't know what that was. Anyways, but then after I do that, what will happen next is try and get back down here. Well, what I will then do next is I'll actually make a new polygon so that I can outline what the Russian advance was, and then I will then drag the main Russian line up to where this polygon is, and then tomorrow I'll just delete the extra polygon so that, and then I'll put new ones in for the new updates. The point is that it's time consuming, so I'm going to do my best here. Maybe if there's a better way of doing this, absolutely, I would love to know if there's a better way. I'm gonna go ahead and mention something else here. I would love to be able to like draw arrows. That would be excellent. I would love to be able to do that. I simply can't at the moment. If anyone knows how to do that, I see Weeb Union. I'll just go ahead and say right now, one of my main inspirations, Weeb Union. Shout out to that guy. He's an excellent map updater. I watch his videos every single day. So he's one of my main inspirations, but he has this like thing that he like draw arrows with. I just don't have that. I don't know what that is or where that comes from, so I don't know how to do that. If somebody knows, please tell me. Anyways, but based on what we have right now, this is the new update where the Russian forces have captured this area west of Pavlivka. They used to control this ground a long time ago, then they lost it. Now they've regained it. It's nothing much to it, just some open fields, but it is a decent sized advance nevertheless. You can see if I zoom out a little bit, it is a noticeable advance. In general, we've been seeing the Russian forces press this line here, from here, from Konstyantynivka, down to near Vuhledar. We know Vuhledar was a big site for a massive battle in the early 2023, and it was a big loss for Russia. And this line here has hardly moved at all, but the Russian forces have now captured all the fields east of the 00532 road, and are now trying to advance beyond it. It looks like they're trying to advance on Voldiane. If they capture Voldiane, they will then be able to turn and advance on the rear of Vuhledar and force the Ukrainians out of it, allowing the Russian forces to capture Vuhledar. That seems to be the Russian goal right now, because we've seen recently how they've captured a lot of Konstantinivka. This is another thing. This is actually kind of outdated. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and show you. I'm pretty sure the Russian forces have captured pretty much all of Konstantinivka at this point. So let's go ahead and fix this map here. Go ahead and... I hate when it does it. See, that's part of the reason why I started getting so mad at this, is that it will just randomly do that sometimes, and then I have to go back down here again. It's not the best system. Let me just put it like that. It's not amazing. And I think I saw on Deep State yesterday that it looks like the Russian forces captured some ground up here, so I guess I don't know if they captured this. I don't think they did. They just captured this area, so I'll pull this back. So now that I've done that, I'll go here, grab this, and then I'll just start drawing like this. So this will be the new Russian gains as of recently. I know, this is boring as heck, I know. But I have to do, this is what I do for every single one of these. Drag this down here, make this red, and then border width, make it big. And now I go here to the main line, like the main polygon, and then I drag it to match up with this, like that. So this is why this can be time consuming. I'm just showing you guys this one now to show you guys why this is hard. And I'm gonna do my best to try and stay with it. Because I am, I have other things. I am a busy person. I'll just leave it at that. As of right now, I'm quite busy, but I'm gonna do my best to try and keep this as daily as possible. If I ever do need to take like a full week off or 2 weeks off of no updates or whatever, I'll try and make updates no less than 3 times a week. That's my aiming for. I'm gonna try and do it daily if I can. If I need to go like a week or 2 weeks off for something like important going on, I'll leave. I will make like a little post saying, hey, no updates for like a week or 2 weeks, something like that, and then I'll come back to it and I'll get caught up or whatever. I won't make a full video probably of showing all the updates because you guys will just watch other people to keep up with it. You'll know what the differences are. So I'll just get back into it from where I left off, and I'll change the map behind the scenes. But anyways, this is another Russian advance that I forgot to put on here, but here you go. I just showed you guys how I do it. This is Konstyantynivka. Russian forces have basically captured the entire thing. So we see Russian forces are generally advancing in this direction and in this direction on Vuhledar, trying to get behind Vuhledar, forcing the Ukrainians out of Vuhledar. If Vuhledar falls, then it will be basically nothing but open field. This whole area is just open field. There's a village here. This is a pretty big village. Hold on. Boho-Yavlenka, I think that's how you say it, is a big one. Got this one here. But it's mostly open field. Southern Donetsk, like all of this, is just wide open fields for the most part, with a few villages here and there. Now, it actually has shown to be harder for the Russian forces to advance through open fields like that. Same with the Ukrainians. But we'll see what happens. Because it looks like Russian forces are starting to set their sights on Vuhledar and take it into a pincer maneuver like this. Let's move on over here to Zaporizhzhia. We got some changes over here from the past couple of days. Nothing much, but we see the Russian forces have cleared out the Robotyne salient almost completely. Like, the Ukraine forces used to be down to here at one point. The Ukraine forces were all the way down to here trying to outflank Novoprokopivka. That used to be a village that was being talked about a lot, but as you can see now, it's just not being talked about anymore because it's been left behind. So the Russian forces have been able to push back, and the Ukraine forces are almost being pushed back to where they started, right around in this area right here. So Russian forces have been able to completely clear out the last flanking Ukrainian positions around Robotyne and are now being pushed back up to this, I guess this is like a nature preserve, Balkan Mapper. It's not a village, it's like a nature preserve. I guess that's what that is. I'm not sure what that symbol means. Some kind of nature preserve, but the Ukrainian forces have been pushed back to that. I remember the Russian forces used to control that. The Ukrainian forces took it in 2023. Now the Russian forces are getting close to retaking it again. So little changes there. There is nothing in Kherson. Nothing's going on over there. Now let's get to the big advances. This has been the talk. Ever since Avdiivka fell, this has been the talk. And the Russian forces then had that breakthrough in Ocheretine, and then ever since then it's just been downhill. It really started to go downhill when the Russian forces took Prorez. They've just been following this railway up to Pokrovsk. And really, it's kind of a conglomerate of 3 cities. Pokrovsk is the big one. We have Mirnograd right here. And Russian forces they're really close. Like that, they've cleared out the last village of Mykolaievka. This is the last village standing between them and Mirnograd. It's right there. They're like, what? I want to see how far that is. So from the edge Russian positions, they're less than a kilometer. They are less than a kilometer away from reaching the first buildings of Mirnograd. So let's close that. So Mirnograd, whoa, stop doing that. Mirnograd will probably be the first place Russian forces get a foothold in, and they'll start fighting their way up the city. The Russian forces are seeking to cut this highway, which is called the T-0504 highway, because it leads all the way up to Konstyantynivka. Civilians are already not allowed to travel on this road because of how close Russian forces have gotten to it. And the Russian forces, just a few months ago, they were way back here. Like, Russian forces a few months ago were like, we're back here. Like, that was not even like a few months ago. Like, it was like February. February is when Avdiivka fell, and that was the start of this whole thing. So Russian forces used to be back here. So from where Russian forces used to be, which was like right there. Hold on, let's redo this. Russian forces used to be right there around Avdiivka, and from there it was to Pokrovsk. It was 28 miles. This is not in kilometers. This is in miles. So they were 28 miles away from Pokrovsk. Now, from the closest positions to Pokrovsk, Russian forces are now just 4.6 miles. That is how far they have advanced. So it's, there's no denying that this is a big deal. So the Russian forces have stopped. Russian forces have been able to advance significantly and capture a lot of ground. It's more of a, again, I said it's a conglomerate of three major cities. Pokrovsk is the big one. Mirograd's here in the middle. And on the right, you have this other smaller one, Mykolaiivka, right here. And it looks like it's also this is a part of it, and then this is another one that's kind of part of it. So really, you have a big conglomerate of a city here, bigger one here, big one right here. And the Russian forces are getting close to entering this one and this one. Mirograd will probably be the first. The Russian forces are going to seek to enter the village along this road, or sorry, the city along this road, and will fight their way up it to cut that highway right here. Once the Russian forces do that, it's going to be a big loss for the Ukrainians. We'll see the Russian forces are going to seek. They're also, it's not just that. The Russian forces have almost completely captured the village of Hrodivka. And then again, that's kind of like the last, this is like the last line of defense before the cities themselves. Pokrovsk is still a little bit of ways. They still got a little bit of ways to go. They have to capture this area first. The Russian forces have also, big deal, entered this big village of Selidova, which I believe is only a little bit smaller than Avdiivka. And the Russian forces have already captured a large chunk of it. And the Russian forces are actually advancing pretty heavily southward. They're going to seek to advance this way. I'm going to use this because I don't have the arrows. I can't draw the arrows, so I'm just going to use this. They're going to seek to advance this way, capturing this string of villages. And when they do that, it's going to force the Ukrainians to abandon all this territory over here, including around Krasnohorivka. And if they don't, then they risk encirclement. There's also a Russian effort from Maximilianivka to advance here, and they only have to advance a little bit ways. They only have to advance to reach this river and to reach the Volcha River. They only have to advance 3.5 miles. So it's not a lot. The Russian forces can advance here and keep pushing south. It will force the Ukraine to give up all this territory, and once they do that, it will even out the playing field here. That you see here, all this will come under Russian control. That's a pretty big chunk. That's a good chunk of Donetsk right there. And it will force Ukraine to fall back onto Kurakova. And when Russian forces attack and take Selidove, they will begin advancing along this highway, the E50 highway, up towards Pokrovsk as well. They will advance along they will also continue to advance along the railway. And at the same time, they will storm Mirnograd. So in general, in a short period of time, it's still going to take some time, but if things continue at this pace, like this is about a week's advances right here. So if things continue at this pace and give it like few more months, at the absolute latest, by the end of the year, the Russian forces will probably control something like this. Will probably control, at the very least, by the end of the year, we'll control something like this. Something like that. All this will fall under Russian control by the end of the year, probably. And from there, there's not much left for southern Donetsk. It will give the Russians a major opportunity to flank behind this how do I say this? This line of big cities that are like the key cities of Donetsk. Like these cities right here form this line of defense. They form this line of defense right here. In fact, I'm actually going to leave that line there. I'm not even going to move it. I'm just going to leave it there. They form from the land to Sloviansk to Krematorsk to Druzhivka down to Konstyantynivka. This is like the big line of cities that keep the Russian forces at bay behind this line. But if the Russian forces can capture all of this down here, then it will allow the Russian forces to flank behind this line and will force the Ukraine to give up anyways, especially if we see a major push by the Russians up here in the north. Onto Izium, back to onto Liman, all territory they used to control. But they couldn't hold it because they didn't have enough force at the time. Now they do. And the Ukrainian forces are in a lot worse position as well at this point. So we're going to see the Russian forces try to capture this by the end of the year. And from there, it's just going to be like dominoes. It will fall rapidly, and Donetsk will rapidly fall under Russian control. In fact, we're already seeing the Russian forces begin to approach the Dnipro region. So pretty soon, we might see Russian forces reach and enter into the Dnipro region of Ukraine. And we'll have another oblast being fought over. Moving up north, we don't have a whole lot to talk about, but we do have some good news, or sorry, big news up here. Russian forces have advanced here, capturing land around Stelmanivka, Berestova, and Pishane. And we see the Russian forces continue their advance here. They're advancing southward. It looks like, again, just like they're doing in Donetsk, to force Ukraine's out of this region to give it up. And from there, it will even out this field. It will level the playing field, if you will, for then a final push in all directions onto the Oskil River to cut this region too. It will to cut this region like that, and then also down here, breaking it up. What the heck? Whatever. You get the point. Breaking it up into two different regions. So, and then the Russian forces can then begin their offensive onto Kupyansk. Moving up further north again, we have more Russian advances here in Sinkivka. This advance here in Sinkivka is a big deal. This village has been fought over so heavily for so long, and the Russian forces have finally managed to capture the majority of it. And after that, the only thing standing between them and Kupyansk itself is this village of Petropavlivka. And it is a big village. It's not going to be easy for Russian forces to take that. But we've seen Russian forces achieve something almost unexpected right here. We are seeing a pretty strong effort by the Russians to advance in this area down here. And they're advancing the city of Sinkove. So if Russian forces can reach Sinkove, they might actually be able to gain a foothold beyond the Oskil River already and flank Kupyansk. That's all predictions, but for right now, these are the Russian advances. These actually are the real advances right here. The capture of Pishani was a big and unexpected deal. It's a big deal that happened. Up in the Russian incursion into Kharkiv, small little changes. We have a Ukrainian advance right here, near west of Tike, and it's not much. It's just a little bit of open fields and forested area. This area has been extremely stagnant. It has not changed whatsoever in like a long time. So this little advance here shows the Ukrainian forces are still active here, but in general, it's a complete stalemate. No changes at all. There's just not really anything to talk about up here. Moving on to the last area up here in the Kursk region, we do see we have a lot of changes up here. This is the one area where the Ukrainian forces, they are still pushing hard. They're still trying really hard to push the Russian forces back and to force them to relocate a large number of forces to basically try and get the Russian forces to give up their offensive here in Pokrovsk and redirect them up here. But it so far hasn't been working, and Russian forces have already gathered enough forces to begin fighting back. We see the Ukrainian forces have managed to advance here in the open fields, capture a couple villages here, and down here. But the Russian forces themselves are also fighting back. They've managed to recapture a village here, and they've actually recaptured a lot of villages up here. So the Ukrainian forces are also starting to advance, or trying to advance on the city of Kornevo, but it's basically been stalled out. Nothing really happened there for a while. And the Russian forces are starting to fight back. So the Russian forces are starting to begin to push the Ukrainians out. Or, well, not really. They're not really pushing Ukrainians out, but the Ukrainian advance has slowed down to a minuscule advance. And the Russian forces, whenever they can, are striking back and taking back territory. So we can see that it's fluent, but it's not heavily in Ukraine's favor anymore. And there's been rumors about Russian forces, launching a crazy offensive on Sumy from these flanks to encircle the Ukrainians. No really talk about that, but in general, that is your whole map update right there. That's all the changes. I do want to talk about the political changes, like political things that have happened as well. We've been having some pretty consistent news about Belarus. How the Belarusians have been gathering forces on the Ukrainian border. And we've seen it happen before. There's been talks, is Belarus going to join the war? Is Belarus going to attack Ukraine? We haven't seen it happen yet, but Russia did use at the start of the war, they did use Belarus as a jumping off point to attack Kyiv, using their own forces. So it's not out of the question that Belarus could take a part in some sort of active role in this war. But over the last couple of weeks, we've been hearing more and more about Belarusian buildup on the Ukrainian border. And we don't know if there are Russian forces involved in that. So we'll have to see what happens. But for this is kind of the first time that we've been having pretty consistent talks about buildup of Russian forces and Belarusian forces on the Ukrainian border. Ever since the start of the war, really. There was a few times where there was Belarusians here that came up, then they pulled back. There was talk at one point that the Wagner group might use Belarus to attack Kyiv, something like that. That never happened. But now we do have consistent talk about buildup on the Belarusian border. That's just not happened before. Now it's been going on for weeks now, so we'll have to see if there is going to be an attack from Belarus onto Ukraine to hit the Ukrainian northern flank. In Ukraine, at that point, if that happens, Ukraine will basically be fighting a war on all fronts except their western border. Because they'll be fighting on a border all the way from here, all the way through the Donbas, which they're already losing badly, and they're already very undermanned, all the way up through Kharkiv, into Sumy, into Kursk from Sumy. They'll have to protect their border in Chernihiv, and then all the way they'll be fighting along this massive Belarusian border. So from here all the way around down to here, they'll be fighting. They'll have to kill, and that's something Ukraine just likely will not be able to sustain at that point, even with Western aid. And Western aid is already it's there, but it's not what it needs to be to help true up Ukraine. And there's a lot of Western countries that are mad at Ukraine about this Kursk invasion. Some say it's okay, some say it's not. Like some countries say they don't care, some say they're mad at Ukraine for it. There's a lot of countries that say that this should not have happened. And just to go into the quick, let's just take a quick little talk about the map change. Oh, sorry, not map changes. The political, things that have been going on political wise. But let's see here, because we do have some talks today, political wise. So for one, Dmitry Peskov stated that Russia's response to the attack on the Kursk Oblast is already underway and will continue. We can basically just say the Russian forces are counterattacking, and that they're seeing some success, which is true. The Ukrainian forces are also seeing some success as well. So, and he also said, according to Peskov, Russia will do everything necessary to protect its interest. Its potential has turned out to be even greater than could ever been previously assumed. I mean, Peskov, he says stuff like that. But Russia has, proven itself, 2022 was Russia looked like an idiot. I mean, it was horrible. They looked like there was something wrong with them almost. Because, they couldn't, in 2022, Ukraine was riding high, then Bakhmut happened, and that was the start. Like, Bakhmut was really the start of, things are turning around here. And then Avdiivka was the real start of, this is bad. Like, what's going on here? Ukraine's losing. What's going on over here? That was when it really started to go downhill for Ukraine. But nevertheless, it's not in the tubes, it's not the Russian forces were one day here, now they're over here. Nevertheless, it's still clear that Ukraine is losing this war, and this up here was was more of a distraction, if anything. And some Ukrainian forces are mad that this happened, especially the soldiers trying to defend Pokrovsk. They're like, "What the heck, man? You send those forces up there. What about us down here? We need those forces down here to stop the Russian advance." The Russian Defense Ministry reported a massive drone attack last night. There was 158 drones. They said 158 drones were shot down. They said. According to Sergei Lavrov, the only one interested in a major war in the Middle East is Israel. Again, he's referring to what's going on down here. This has kind of been a distraction, and it's kind of helped Russia because the West has been distracted by what's going on down here in the Gaza with Israel. So it's been like a distraction almost. And that's kind of what he's referring to, trying to keep the distraction going. Bloomberg reported that 400,000 Ukrainians could leave the country in 2024 due to power cuts. And it's been over the last couple of days, the Russian forces, over the whole year really, Ukraine's been really losing its air defense capabilities. And the Russian forces have been attacking their energy facilities. And that's not just been, it used to be they would do that in the winter, but now they're doing it all the time. Like, they're just trying to put Ukraine out of power. And that makes sense, no power. If your factories don't have power, you can't produce anything. And Ukraine has been recently, they're trying to switch to a more domestic war production stance because Western countries are wavering in their support, especially the United States. There's a campaign, there's the election. I made videos on that. I'll be making another one soon. How they're going to be, and there's fear that in Ukraine, if Donald Trump wins the election, that will be the end of U.S. support militarily to Ukraine. That obviously could be a problem. Or will be a problem for Ukraine. So Ukraine wants to increase their domestic production. They have been doing so successfully to a small extent. It's still nowhere near enough. But as Russian forces can knock out Ukraine's power, factories don't have power, factories don't make anything. So that's instead of directly attacking their factories directly to knock out the factories themselves, knock out the power, the factories can't do anything, and Ukraine doesn't have power. So the civilians get angry or they don't like it. So it's kind of so the Russian forces have kind of switched from trying to knock out their power in the winter to let's just knock it out in general. Do it all the time. And the Russian forces have been pretty successful in doing that. According to Zelensky, over 160 missiles of various types, 780 guided aerial bombs, and 400 attack UAVs of various types were fired from Russia on Ukraine just the past week. That's obviously a lot. That's a lot of stuff. The commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, General Sersky, said that in the direction of the enemy's main attack, the situation is difficult, obviously indirectly referring to what's going on down here in Pokrovsk, saying that the situation is not looking good down there. There was a Moscow refinery that was struck by Ukraine. There was a refinery up here in Moscow that was struck by the Ukrainians. And I believe this is the last one. Oh, no, there's a few more things. The Ministry of Defense of the Netherlands over here announced that the delivery of 28 Viking tracked vehicles to Ukraine. So some tracked vehicles, no big deal, but the more the merrier. Ukraine has been looking to get more stuff like that. Russian media is writing about this. Okay, I already mentioned this. The Russian media writes about the active transfer of armored units of the armed forces of Belarus to the Ukrainian border. So Russia is now acknowledging that there is a pretty significant Belarusian buildup on the Ukrainian border. There's also rumors the Russian forces themselves are part of that, and we'll see what happens. But again, it could just be it could very likely could be that the Russian forces are just going to Russian and Belarusian forces are just going to put their forces here to distract the Ukrainians, and then the Ukrainians will put more forces up there, allowing the Russian forces to get more progress in Donbas. Or it could be a real attack on the way. We'll have to see what happens. Ukraine's operation in the Kursk region is legal and falls under the right of self-defense that was stated by NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg. Have what you will, what he says about that. Whatever you think it's right or wrong, I'm not going to say anything, but that's just what he said. So he's basically saying that Ukraine has every right to do this, what they're doing up here in Kursk. They have every right to do that. All right, that's everything political. That's your map update. That's my very first one. I said I was going to mention my inspirations and my sources where I get my information. Map-wise, my main source is going to be Syriac Maps. I trust him a lot. And that's where I get a lot of my information. The guys that I watch also trust him a lot. I will also use Deep State, which is a pro-Ukrainian source, but I will still use them. I'm going to stay neutral on this, but I will use Deep State. They're pretty reliable. Same with the study of war. They're pretty reliable. But they're always way behind though. So unless they're actually up to date, I'm just not really going to listen to them unless they actually get up to date, because they're usually pretty far behind. But Deep State I will use, and my main source will definitely be Syriac. They are the best. I can definitely say that I think they are the best. My inspirations for doing this are Weeb Union. Weeb Union is an excellent map. Two guys. Weeb Union is one of them. The other guy is Military Summary. He probably has the best map that I can think of. His map is definitely, in my opinion, the best one. So he's definitely an inspiration. For my political, like where I get the stuff that's like off the battlefield, the non-battlefield stuff, I rely on Balkan Mapping, who is another YouTuber. Like I just read it right now. Like the stuff that I just told you, I got it from him. So go subscribe to him. Excellent guy. He is very committed. He makes daily updates he hardly ever misses a day. Very reliable, very retro recommended, and he is excellent for getting off the battlefield information and on the battlefield information. He does updates on the battlefield as well in his videos, and they're short, they're quick, little 4-minute videos. Like watching, get your information, and that's all. So absolutely recommended. If you guys want to see this stuff, my videos here, improving quality, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification. I'm gonna keep at this, and from now on, this is gonna be a new part of my channel. That's gonna be all for today, guys. Have a good one. I'll see ya.